All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Naja Nights with your host EJ. So, for today's episode, we're going to have a deeper conversation. It's going to be a real deep topic. So, I would love to ask for anyone at home who's listening that you don't really like hearing discussions about sexual abuse or anything of that matter, or maybe you have gone through it yourself and you feel like you haven't fully healed and you don't want to hear someone discuss it. I would love to ask for you to not listen to this episode at the moment and just come back to this episode when you feel like you are in a better mental state. Regardless though, my show is very healing and I feel like it's very loving and nurturing experience. So you don't have to worry about this being like too much. I mean, I'm going to go deep into it because just for my sake, because it's also a very healing conversation for me. And sometimes for me, when I'm discussing things, I have to just go into it full on and just really talk about it and not cut corners. So yeah, just know that this is going to be a healing experience. And yeah, so please, if you do not want to hear this discussion, just come back in the future. So if you haven't recognized already, yes, the topic today is about sexual abuse, and my history with it. Girl, I had to light me an incense, honey, cause I'm like, girl, this is a deep conversation, child. I'm like, I had to light me an incense. And I had to put a crystal on. I got me on a rose quartz for love, self-love. But yeah. I was actually supposed to have this conversation with a friend of mine who was going to be on the show with me, but some things came up, so he won't be on the show to discuss that. He might be on the show in the future, you never know, but some things came up, so that we can't do that at the moment. But my spirit, just something came in my spirit telling me I need to talk about this now. I was trying to wait for it to do it with my friend, but I'm like, this is something that it's a healing experience for me too. And I just feel like a lot of people really will benefit from this conversation, because a lot of people do not discuss sexual abuse, truly, especially people don't really discuss sexual abuse in the family. And that is what I experienced. So I felt that it's really good to come in here and discuss it and talk about it, because it really can help a lot of people. It helped me a lot when I finally took the time to sit with myself and acknowledge these feelings and these emotions. It really, really helped me out a lot. So I felt like, okay, I'm like, if this really helped you to talk about this with yourself, EJ, then take the time to, get on your podcast and really help somebody else with this. It's something a woman I love on YouTube. Her name is Adunola. She says, like, when you get to a point where you can heal yourself spiritually and get to that point, she's like, it's no good to heal yourself when you turn and look at your neighbor and your neighbor is going through a lot. So it's like, because I've done a lot of healing work and obviously, I still have work to do, girl. I'm not perfect. I still have things I'm working on, but in terms of this particular issue, I've gained more strength to discuss it. So it's like, well, let's help out somebody else who doesn't have the strength yet. Let's give them some of that strength to help them get through this. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be discussing today. And yeah, sorry, my mind went a little bit blank. But so yeah, I was going to say what kind of like prompted me to talk about this. So the things that kind of made me want to come here and discuss it was me and my friend, we had a long discussion about sexual abuse. And he said to me, like, oh, like, you should really talk about this on your podcast because it'll be healing for people. And I was like, you know what? Yes, it will. It really will. And it's like, it's not just healing for others. It really is healing for me as well. But me and my friend had that discussion, and then I watched I listened to my friend, another friend of mine's, her podcast, which her podcast is called I want to give her a shout out because she's an amazing friend of mine's. But my friend Brenda, she has a podcast called the Northside Podcast. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's so hilarious. I just love I just love their energy. And they have an episode recently about siblings. It says like siblings, rivalry with siblings. And like the main not the main topic, but one of the topics in the episode was about sexual abuse. It was like really small. It was like a small section. But it like touched me a lot because it was amazing to hear her man. I can't remember if he's I can't remember if he's her husband or boyfriend, but her man who's on the show with her, he was discussing his history with sexual abuse and being molested, and I really commend him for taking the time to do that, especially as a black man. It's hard for us to come out and talk about that in our history, to talk about sexual abuse and if we were abused or not. Because growing up in the black community, they always try to make us feel like, oh, you have to be strong, and you know, black men don't get molested, or you know, and then it's like, if you do say that you were molested, people try to find a way to try to undermine it, or try to find a way to make it like to minimize it. Like you'll be like, oh, I was touched or something like that, or I was molested, and then someone in your family might be like, oh, you weren't molested, they were just like playing with you, you know, something. Like people just try to find a way to make you feel like you're overreacting, or that you're being too sensitive about something. So I really commend him for talking about that, and it really encouraged me to really just come on here and really discuss this, because I feel like the current state that the world is in, you know, with the pandemic and stuff like that, this is a great moment for us to really, really address things that we are going through personally. A great moment, you know, to really have that reflection and address these things. And then once we really address that, we truly heal, and then we can go into this new chapter of the world, you know, that's a lot better. Excuse me. I don't know why when I get on my show, I always end up burping. I don't know what it is. Excuse me. I think it's because I was drinking water. I always drink water before I get on here, so I don't like have a dry mouth. I'm like, girl, I ain't got time to be talking and then my mouth be dry. But yeah. So listening to their show, it really, really encouraged me to really get on here and discuss it and talk about it. And also, me and my friend, when my friend was over here, we watched a movie called Mysterious Skin. It's a really good movie, you guys. And when he was discussing me about his history with sexual abuse, and I was discussing about my history with sexual abuse, we both were like, well, I told him, I said we should watch a movie called Mysterious Skin, because I watched that movie when I was younger, and the movie really, really helped me out a lot, because it perfectly described the emotions and the feelings of being a young boy who gets molested by a man. And not many movies really talk about that, and Mysterious Skin really talked about it in a way that was so powerful and raw and in your face. And I'm like I was just like, the world needs to see this movie. It's a movie that really so they can better understand gay men who have gone through that. Yeah, the movie it follows the plot of two boys. It's two boys. Both of them were both molested by their baseball coach. And one of them, he kind of took it and internalized it, and it kind of like messed him up, and he kind of just went through life. Well, he kind of like used a form of escapism and like made it seem like he wasn't molested. He like made it seem like he was abducted by aliens. And so he just throughout his whole life, he kept thinking aliens were testing on him, and really he was molested. And then the other boy, he took it and just he was molested, but then he continued the cycle and kept molesting he molested like two other kids in the movie, I think, or a kid in the movie. And then he grew up and became a male prostitute, and was, you know, selling himself. And it's a really, really good movie. It's really good. It really perfectly kind of describes the emotions of that. And I really enjoy the resolution of the movie. So it's really good. But I will say, for people who don't like to see, because there is a rape scene in the movie. So I actually wrote down a timestamp for the rape scene, just for anybody who doesn't want to see that. So the rape scene, it starts at an hour and 22 minutes and 22 seconds into the movie, and then the rape scene ends at an hour and 23 minutes and 58 seconds. So I just wanted to let you know that, and if you can, try to take the time to write that down on a piece of paper, so you know if you want to skip it. I know there's people who, most people, they like to watch a movie and the full movie from beginning to end and not miss anything to get the story. But some people like to skip scenes like that because it's a bit too traumatic, or maybe maybe because I don't know your story. I don't know if something happened to you yesterday or a week ago. I don't want you to watch this movie and then get triggered. So that's why I wrote down those timestamps. But yes, it's a really, really good movie. And the reason why I mentioned that movie again is because, yes, as I was saying, the story resonates a lot with me and my story, because the character Neil in the movie, he, like, when he got molested, and then he kind of continued the cycle and molested another kid, and it was like a line he said that, like, it gave me chills. And he said, when I first watched it, he was like, oh, this is like a thing that kids do to have fun, and things like that. And that is what I went through as a kid. So I'll just start at the beginning, and then we'll get to that point. And so I'll just start at the beginning. So before I tell the story, let me take some time to clear myself real quick, and then I'll come right back. Alrighty, okay, I'm back. So yeah, I was just saying I needed to take some time to clear myself, because I realized, I'm like, I never actually discussed this on a format like this, like on a podcast. I'm like, this is kind of strange. So I was like, girl, let me just realign myself real quick. All right, so let's start from the beginning. So for me, it's mainly like for other kids who were molested, who, it's like some kids, they go through it in their family. I went through it with a cousin of mine's. It was like Thanksgiving when I was younger. I can't remember. I can't really say, like, pinpoint what year it was, but it was Thanksgiving, girl. And and yeah, and just like during that weekend, like that vacation, that Thanksgiving weekend, like during one of those nights, that's when my cousin molested me during that night. And yeah, and during that same night, we also ended up, I can't remember if it was that night or if it was like another night, but like I remember it was like so messed up. Like, he molested me, and then he like encouraged me to do it to his brother, who's also my cousin. And so I did it to his brother, who's also my cousin, like, because in my mind I was thinking, oh, this is how kids have fun, like this is just, or not kids, but this is what boys do, like this is like another way that we have fun, that we play around, and you think that as a kid, like you think, oh, this is like another thing that boys just do, like just to have fun. You don't really think too much of it. And so I was basically just like in the movie that I was mentioning earlier, Mysterious Skin. It's like I was thinking, like the way how the character Neil was just thinking, it's what boys do to have fun, and it's like that's what I was thinking in that moment. And then it's like the cycle still continued for me until I actually realized what I was doing. And unfortunately, I did it to another kid. Maybe I was like in first grade of elementary school, or maybe I can't remember. But I know there's like another boy who like was at my house, and then like I like kind of made like a sexual advancement on him, and in my mind just thinking like, oh, it's just like a way for us to have fun. And it's like, I'm thankful that nowadays I'm able to look back on that and acknowledge that I'm thankful that I managed to break away from that. And I would say like the cycle actually broke for me like in elementary school, because I did it with another kid, but it wasn't like it it wasn't in the format that my cousin tried to do it to me, because my cousin, when he molested me, it was like him trying to like groom me and into it and make me feel very comfortable and then molest me. But when I was in elementary school, it was like a kid that I ended up like having sex with in a way, like, but it wasn't like a grooming type of thing. It was like, the funny thing was, like, with that kid, like the both of us were actually like into it, and he was like, he came on to me and was like, oh, let's play a game, and girl, and then, you know, then he started taking off his clothes, and I was like, okay. I was like, why is he taking off his clothes? And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm into it. And then I took off my clothes, and so but that wasn't like what happened with the two kids prior to that, which was my cousin and then another boy. Like, to those two kids, I was doing to them what my cousin was doing to me. And so yeah, the cycle broke for me in elementary school when I realized what was happening, and I took the time to trace it all back to my cousin and recognize what he did to me, and it helped me break away from it. And so I'm always so thankful, because I see other people, you know, it's like this really big thing where people like always kind of like attack pedophiles, but in my heart I'll always feel bad for them in some way. Like, obviously I don't approve of them molesting kids, like if they're like 40 years old, or just in general, like being a grown ass adult and you're like molesting some kid. Like, I don't justify that, but I have sympathy for them, because I'm like, I don't know if all of them have gone through that, if all of them have gone through being molested as a kid, but a good bit of them, they were molested as children, and they just didn't do the healing work, and they didn't work on themselves to break out of that, and it followed them into adulthood, and then they ended up molesting kids. And it's like and it scared me, because I'm like, what if I never did the healing work? What if I never took the time to reflect and realize what it was that I was doing? Like, I probably could have been like my cousin, being a guy who's in like high school. He was like, I didn't say his age, but he was like in high school and molested me, and I was probably in the first grade of elementary school. I can't remember, but he was like a full grown guy. Like, it was a lot, and I was just like, okay. And it wasn't something like, and it wasn't traumatic too, like my molestation. That's why I'm able to talk about it, because it wasn't like very traumatic. As I was saying, he like kind of groomed me into it. It wasn't something where he like forced himself on me. Like, it was something where he just like groomed himself to get me to, like, he just like pulled his pants down, and sorry for getting vulgar, but you know, like, he pulled his pants down and just had me like touch him in his private, and then that's just what happened. And I don't know how long it took me before I finally told my family about it. I think like too, like part of the reason I also didn't want to tell people is because like people always say like, oh, most gay men were molested, and that's the reason why they were gay. And so I always didn't want to say it, because I'm like, oh, people gonna think that's the reason why I'm gay, and that's gonna be so annoying, when it's like that's not the case. Because even before that, I already would walk around the house like, you know, like swaying my hips, or like always, you know, be kind of feminine from time to time and act flamboyant. So it was like, girl, I was like that even before, you know, that situation. But that's what made me even more afraid to stay. I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna think this is the reason why I'm this way, you know, and things like that. So yeah, I'm trying to make sure I'm addressing all this correctly and talking about all this correctly, because it's a lot of people go through this, and it's something that I just it's like, it really sucks how so many people go through sexual abuse as kids, and then that sexual abuse actually kind of like followed me. Well, the kid that I in elementary school, the one who like, he was like at my house for a sleepover, and then he was like, oh, like you know, like, and I know a lot of y'all know about this. A lot of people don't like discussing it. And I was laughing because I was on Twitter, and someone said, they're like, y'all know so many of y'all used to play this as kids, but you don't want to say it because you don't want to sound like a freak. But they're like, a lot of kids used to play the game called House when they were little kids, or play Doctor. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, House or Doctor, basically, well, House is like it's like two kids, usually a boy and a girl, and they pretend they're a mommy and daddy, and then they go, oh, now it's time for mommy and daddy to make kids, and then like they'll take their pants down and like try to have sex or pretend to have sex to have children. And then doctor is when you, well, I know it's different for each culture. Like, you know, things are different based on the locations. And so from my location, I live in Florida, so that's kind of like how it was for me living in Florida. And I know like everybody has different ways that they go about doing that, but like for me, where I live, doctor was basically like one kid is the doctor and one kid is the patient. It's so messed up, and I'm like, who taught? That's the thing, because I never learned. I didn't know about that game until a kid came to me and told, and like, cause it was a kid who I was saying like in elementary school, who I ended up like, he took off his clothes, and because he came to me and said, let's play doctor. And so, and there was another kid who wanted me to play some other game with him, but I said no, because I already felt like, well, I said no because the name of it sounded already like promiscuous. Like the name of the game was called Sex in the City, and he was like, you want to play Sex in the City with me? And I was like, no, that already sounds creepy to me. I was like, girl, I don't know what he about to do to me, girl. I was like, when he said Sex in the City, I was like, okay, this sleepover is over and done with. I remember I left his room and I went to the kitchen. I just sat in the kitchen for the rest of the night until it was like time to go to bed, because I was like, no, that sounds creepy. And so I left his room. But that's so funny, I forgot about that. That was like, he really tried me, telling something, you want to play Sex in the City? And I was like, I do not like that name, honey. And I was like, that already sounds creepy to me. He's like, it's not. He's like, come on. And I was like, no. But with this other kid though, he came to me and was like, let's play doctor. And so for people who don't know what doctor is, yeah, one person is the patient and one person is the doctor. And so he wanted to be the patient, so he just like laid down and then did that. I won't go into full detail. And you know, and we did things, and basically the way of it is just kids exploring each other's bodies. Like that's kind of what it was, but I won't fully go into detail of that. And that's what led, and so that's what started that connection with that kid. And so me and him, we became really good friends and became close friends, and we hung out a lot. And it was something, I guess we just never really got caught fooling around, and it just kept evolving to the point that like it followed me. And he was like always like 3 years younger than me. Like I think he was like 3 or 4 years younger than me. And it followed me for a good minute. He just always kept like, he would text me and just want to come over, and then end up, and you know, he'll text me and say, I want to hook up, and I always kind of in the back of my mind regretted it, and regretted that first night where we played that game. And I was like, oh my god, I was like, if we never played that game, we wouldn't still be in this predicament. And it just kept happening until I was like 17. And when I was 17, I told him, I was like, I'm about to turn 18. And I was like, I don't like that we're still doing this. And I'm like, I feel like you're too young for me. I'm like, you're like 3 years younger than me. And so I was, and maybe that's not bad. I mean, that's not bad. Like a friend of mine was like, they're like, if he's like over 5 years younger than you, then it's like, okay, or 5 years and over, then it's like, okay, that's really, really creepy. But like 3 years isn't like bad. But yeah, I was just like, I felt like he was too young for me, and it's just like his personality, his mentality. I wanted to be with somebody who, I want to be with somebody who's more mature, who I feel like they're not so, you know, I just it didn't feel good to be like messing with someone who is obviously like kind of immature in a way, like almost like a kid. So I during that night, I was just like telling him like, oh, like, because he wanted to like do it again, like one more night, like have sex. And so I was like, okay, fine. And so we did it. But then it ended up, so he like, so we did that, we had sex. But then after, I was like, okay, like that's like, we're done with that, like let's just be friends and be done with that. He basically, I guess he just wasn't with it, and he was over it. And so, and I don't know like fully how, well, I guess I was just like tired and I was over it, and I was just laying down, and then he just decided to get on top of me, and then he decided to rape me that night. And so that happened, and I was like, okay, wow. I was like, well, that's cool. You decided to get on top and rape me. And I never really knew what that, well, in the moment, I didn't fully know if it was rape. I just felt like, oh, it's just him wanting to, you know, have sex. And But then after after I watched a video where a girl discussed different forms of it and how it can happen in different ways, I was like, oh damn. I was like, oh crap, I was raped. And so I didn't know that until I took the time to watch a video of someone discussing it. And so it took me a long time to not too long, but it took me a minute to heal from that and recover. I remember when I texted him afterwards, and I was like, and we just had like it was like a big argument. He was like, oh, you're trying to make me seem like I'm some rapist, and he's like you wanted it, and like it was just like a whole crazy thing. And but you know, I had like a great moment of clarity. I think it was this year, actually. I think this year, 2020, he messaged me to apologize, and he acknowledged that he did rape me, and he was saying how he truly was sorry, and it was a really healing and beautiful conversation. We had a really nice conversation, and now we're actually friends. And I know some people might be like, how can you be friends with someone with someone like that? But I'm able to forgive people, and not just that, but just kind of seeing what probably led to them being that way or things like that. And for him, like, he always, like, his family was very, like, they didn't really show him a lot of love. They always be like jerks, like, sometimes to him, and like it's a lot that, like, his whole family dynamic at home was just crazy. But it's like I look at that, and I had sympathy for him in that way. And not just that, but his apology was actually genuine. It was a genuine apology. I understood where he was coming from. And so I was just like, okay. I was like, but I mean, obviously we don't, when I say friends, I don't mean we hang out. Like, when I say friends, I mean like we might play a video game from time to time together online, you know, things like that. Like, it's not like we're on the phone talking to each other all the time. But it also helped me understand and have, from me, like, understanding how the cycle works for some people and what they do when they continue things. It helped me understand what happened with my cousin. I'm like, and it helped me be able to forgive him, because I realized that maybe he was also molested, and maybe he was, and who knows, I don't know how it happened for him, but he probably was molested, and that's why he continued it and did it to me, you know. And so yeah. Oh Lord. Oh, I was looking at the time of the episode. I'm like, oh girl, it's getting kind of long. I'm trying to make sure it's not too long. But yeah, so yeah, you guys. But yeah, the whole reason I even wanted to really mention all of this and bring it up, and it's healing for me to talk about it. But I know that a lot of people go through these things, and excuse me, I keep burping, you guys. I know that a lot of people go through these things, and it's like they don't really have someone to go to or turn to that has gone through it too, to discuss it and talk about it with. And in that, it kind of makes people feel alone, and like they don't really have that type of outlet in a way. And it's just so messed up how these things happen, and when people get molested or raped, it's just so, it's like some people can be, I always kind of want to say like humans can just be so disgusting, but I feel like maybe it all started with, like, there had to be some particular human, like, way with, like, a long time ago in the past who was corrupted or something, and then they ended up raping somebody or molesting somebody, and then that person just continued the cycle onto other people, and the cycle just continues and continues and continues through different people, and it's like a gene, like a DNA gene or something, or probably not a DNA gene. Well, maybe for some it's a DNA gene, and for others it's like a generational curse, because generational curses are real. It's a real spiritual thing that can happen and follow people, and then for others it's just something that just happens in their lifetime. It happens to them, and then they just continue the cycle in their lifetime. And then it's up to the people who are able to break that cycle. And for me, thankfully, I broke the cycle. I didn't continue doing that. I didn't continue spreading that icky thing that my cousin did to me. And yeah, but I managed to forgive him. I forgive him, and I still love him. You know, I still love my cousin. You know, And one day I feel like we'll definitely have that conversation where we can come together and talk about it. And because we never actually sat and discussed it. We actually haven't. And one day I do want to sit and just tell him that I do forgive him for it. And I would love to know if maybe something happened to him and we can have a discussion, because maybe something did happen to him and maybe he never got to talk about it with somebody. Maybe nobody really asked him if he's okay, or or just to see if he's really good, So, maybe one day that can happen. But yeah, but for anyone who's listening to this and they have gone through it, I pray that you're okay. I pray that it doesn't continue to follow you, and that you can break away from it, and that you gain strength to be able to truly heal from it. And if you choose to, and if you're able to, talk to the person that abused you, if you feel like it'll be worth it, don't put yourself in that position like what happened to me when I talked to the guy who ended up raping me, and during that conversation it really just kind of messed me up, because during the conversation he was like making me seem like I was crazy and like gaslighting me. So if you feel like it's gonna be like that, then I would say don't talk to your abuser, don't talk to the person that attacked you in that way. But if you feel like they're a person who will be understanding, then maybe talk to them. But sometimes you don't really have to. I would say just take the time to just forgive yourself for if you ever blamed yourself for anything, if you ever made yourself feel like you're the reason why it happened. Forgive yourself for doing that, because you're not the reason why it happened. It's a series of unfortunate events that led to that moment, that led to you being molested or raped by that individual. It was not something that you created or that you cultivated. It really wasn't. And for anyone who's listening to this that went down the unfortunate path where they kind of continued the cycle and they probably molested another kid, take the time to forgive yourself too, because just like me, when I was a kid, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just thinking that it was just something that kids do, that boys do to have fun. I didn't really know the strength of what was happening. I didn't know the weight of what it was I was doing. I was just doing something. So take the time to forgive yourself for that if you haven't, and know that you're okay, and that the fact that you're taking this moment to acknowledge this and to acknowledge what you were doing, that already is an amazing and powerful thing that will set you free. So I thank you guys for listening to this episode. I see it as getting long. I always try not to make them too long, because I hate when it takes forever to upload. But yes, I thank you so much for listening, to anyone who has listened. And yeah, this was healing. This was a good talk. Something I didn't think I would get on here and do. But I know that I needed to do it, not only for me, but it can be healing for somebody else too. So alrighty. But if in case anybody is wondering though, I am better now. I am better. I'm happier now. I did all the work to focus on those things and heal and see how it affected me, what happened, what led to certain things, and I'm a lot better now. So thank God, child. Thank God, I'm a lot better. But all right, I love you so much. I thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for October, which is October in like one day or so? Let me see. Let me check my calendar. October is like, I'm so bad with dates, you guys. Like, it makes no sense how I'm so bad with dates. Okay, yeah, October's like on like one day or so. So in October, I'll be starting the Halloween. Well, it's just the October episode. So I'm excited. So some really fun topics will be coming up soon. This was just like a deep topic. All right. Thank you so much for listening. All right. Bye.